Hey you guys, I miss you. So let's talk about your homework. So one of the things I want you to kind of think about today is that you may not have understood how to do it. Well, that's why we're talking right now. I'm going to show you how I do it, and I hope that it clarifies a lot of stuff. But my biggest goal was that you did try to do it because once you read the article, we can kind of work on it together. But if you didn't read it and you didn't try, then there's not much we can do. This is going to sound kind of crazy to you. So I want to talk about how I kind of go from point A to a finished assignment. And so I'm going to use this article for that. So this would be a pop article. I found this on NC Live, I think last year, I'm not 100% sure, but I found it on NC Live. And so, what I do when I find an article that I really like is I go ahead and I print it out and I highlight it. So, now, the first time I read this, I was like, this is amazing. I want to be a vegan. I'll never have diabetes. But, you might have read it and thought otherwise, though, when you saw it yourself. So, anyway, I want to show you what I did. So, I'm going to show you how I worked this. And so I want to go ahead and talk for a second about what colors are what. So, ethos is the author's credibility. That's in yellow. Logos is logic. That's in green. And pathos is emotion, and that's in orange. So I'm going to talk about kind of why I did what I did and why I marked these things. Now, another thing about analysis is that basically there's not like a whole you can be right or wrong, but for the most part if you explain yourself you're not gonna be wrong. So kind of keep that in your mind as well. So anyway, whenever I did this, I always kind of try to look at ethos first. So I want to show you that I did actually have a little bit of ethos down here. I just marked it with on the outsides. And so the reason I marked that as ethos is I said the National Institutes of Health, Georgetown University, and University of Toronto are all pretty credible institutions. So I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I said that would probably be good credibility. I do think there are a couple little things that are weird, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but it also says they worked with a research team in the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. That already kind of starts to make me question it, though, like their credibility, because I think, who are these people? I know who everybody else is, but I don't know who they are. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And so then I marked that as green as well, because logically, I'm more apt to listen to somebody from the National Institutes of Health, Georgetown University, and the University of Toronto. So I feel like their research would be valid. So that's the kind of logical part of me as well. Notice that there's a little overlap there. You may have that in your paper too. We'll talk about that a little bit more when I'm actually writing stuff down. Okay, so then another thing that I highlighted in green was the thesis sentence. And their thesis here is basically that a vegan diet can basically improve, if not reverse, type 2 diabetes. So that's a big claim in and of itself. But like I said, I was like, I'm gonna be a vegan. Anyway, so a couple things. The reason I marked this as green was because I do think they're setting up their information and they're providing us with very specific statistical numbered information, and so that feels like logos far and away. And I think that's really good. It sets up this kind of experiment for us, so we know that they're doing something that kind of at least has a backbone. So that's good. A couple little things that I did here. I also marked a few places in here that felt more like emotional. I think you could argue some of this stuff, like this sentence where it says the participants who were accepted for the study threw themselves in with enthusiasm. I feel like if this were a hardcore kind of empirical study, that enthusiasm thing feels really way too emotional. Over here, I think number one, they do build their credibility by naming terms, and just the naming of the terms is logical. So that's kind of why I marked those things. One of the things that I thought was super emotional is where they say, it seems too good to be true. That feels really, really advertising to me and super emotional. But then, it does say the numbers prove it, and so whenever they start talking about how the numbers do something, then I see it as more of a logical argument. Okay? Okay, so then I go to the next page, and you might say to yourself, whoa, holy orange. That's pathos, remember. And so I want you to look at this and kind of understand why I marked it the way I did. So to me, they have a couple people in here The subjects were pleasantly surprised at how well they adapted to the vegan diet. One said, if anyone had told me 12 weeks ago that I would be satisfied with a totally vegetarian diet, I would not have believed it. This sounds like just one person's idea and reaction to the diet itself. Totally emotional. And think about it, it almost feels like an advertisement because now I'm like, oh, it's super easy. Maybe I should be a vegan. So that's something interesting. Um, and then it also says some found unexpected benefits. And these are fun things, but these are not anything in numbers. So I think, well, if they're not numbers, where do they go? And to me, this feels like emotional, kind of an emotional thing. And then whenever they're talking about how much weight was lost, I was like, wow, you lost 60 pounds in 12 weeks. That seems like a lot of weight to lose really fast for me. I feel like they had to do something besides just switch their diet. But that's me. And then so I felt like all of this, it was just number one, seems almost too good to be true. And it seems more subjective and more like a sales. It feels more like they're selling me a product. So that's kind of what my thoughts were on that. And then I thought this thing was kind of weird too because I went to this blurb and I was like, what is this? And it seems that they're talking about drinking or feeding children cow's milk versus breast milk. And they're saying that the ones who have cow's milk have more of a chance to get type 1 diabetes. And I was like, well, what does this have to do with anything? To me, it doesn't seem like it has a lot to do with anything because, I mean, honestly, we're talking about type 2 diabetes. We're talking about changing diets. So it just seems like, why are they doing this? It feels like there's an agenda here. Like they're trying to push veganism on me versus having a really kind of having a study that proves that veganism is a great diet for people with diabetes. So now, a little bit toward the bottom though, you guys, green. There's some green in here. Logos. I will say that that is logos. I mean, 59%, that's all numbers. And so I said that all of this was the results of that study is logos. I mean, there's no way around that. So I said that. And then I noticed that I felt like they were kind of, their ethos was examined here. I thought giving background about what a vegan diet would include or what would be avoided in a vegan diet did help build kind of their ethos. Like they understood what veganism was. And then they did have like somebody who was a medical doctor. A couple little problems I have with this is he's also the PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, nonprofit group. He's also their president. So I feel like I don't know, that group really, it's weird to me. So I was like, it keeps popping up in this article. And then I noticed down here at the bottom, finally they told me what they were, is a nonprofit health organization that promotes preventative medicine. So it is a special interest group. And honestly, if you go look them up, they are a pro-vegan diet group as well. Yikes. So, keep that in your mind that really crushes their credibility because they have this whole thing that says it's better to be a vegan, very little logos that helps prove that point, and now they're a special interest group. My God. So, anyway, I have all this information, and this is just the first step. So, what I did after that was I created an outline. And so I think the outline is really more what your paper is going to look like, but we had to get through step 1 to get to step 2. So, seeing how much time, I have plenty of time. Great. So I kind of want to show you what I have. I went ahead and marked this too, just so you kind of can get back to it. But I want to show you how I would have organized this. And this is just my thoughts. This is not my paper. This is how I would have kind of thought about it. And so to me, I would have had an intro, but in that intro, I would have had a thesis. And my thesis would sound something like this: based on the use of ethos, pathos, and logos, food to the rescue does not succeed rhetorically. Yikes. Okay, so here's how I would have broken things down. My first little blurb that I need to talk about is rhetorical situation. Author. There is no named author. And that's all you would say. Honestly, that's the end of that. Audience. So we kind of start to look at who our audience would be for this. Well, this is published in a magazine called Vibrant Life. It sounds like a health magazine to me. I would say the audience of this piece is probably people who are interested in their health. And because I don't have much more than that, I would say probably maybe people who were interested in type 2 diabetes as well could be an audience. But did I say men or women or any race or class? I didn't. I just said this is basically what I thought. And I think, honestly, I look at this and I'm like, okay, it would be a paragraph. It'd be kind of a small paragraph. And then the purpose is where I mention what the thesis is. And so it's basically saying that a vegan diet is more effective at controlling diabetes than the American Diabetes Association diet. You would think they would know, but anyway. And so it tries to show the ease of living a vegan lifestyle as well. Because, and I think that's where that orange on that second page came from, where they're like, too good to be true. This is super easy. So there's one paragraph. My next paragraph is ethos, and that's talking about the author's credibility. So basically I went through all the things that they did, and I didn't mention every single thing, but I talked about the things that really stood out to me. Like, they defined a lot about diabetes. They defined what a vegan lifestyle was. So they did have an understanding, so that builds their ethos. And then they also had information that was collected from respected universities, Georgetown, University of Toronto, and then that makes us trust them, right? Now, my question goes to, however, there's some question about the validity of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. It sounds like a special interest group. We know it was, but I don't want to go into who they are too much, because then that means you'd have to do outside research. And for this paper, I only want you to do research. I only want you to look at these two articles. I don't want you to go outside and look at research. So I said that can make the reader question their motives and their credibility. So that's one of the big places where it fails for me. So then, moving on to my next paragraph, which would be pathos. And they appeal to our emotions basically by having expert testimony, which is people who were in the study, saying that it was an easy dietary choice. And then I actually had the quote about the 12 weeks ago talking about how easy it was, and talks about how readers could easily switch to this vegan lifestyle, which, if any of y'all know much about a vegan lifestyle, it's a little bit harder than just like, oh, I'm a vegan now. It's kind of hard to switch to. And then I thought that they just basically, I feel like they just made everything seem like it was too good to be true. That's my whole kind of thesis with that. Everything was too easy to be true, too easy to be true. Okay? And so then and I would say that most of their findings were like, well, one person said this. So that would kind of go in here. Now, again, this is me just making a list. This is not necessarily how my paragraph would look, but this is basically the information that I'd put in those paragraphs with some sentences that would I would quote the article too. Okay. And then logos, it doesn't have much empirical data. It does succeed a little bit because they told us about what the research was done, what kind of research was done. So they told us how they broke down the research study. And then they also gave us a little bit of the constraints, and then they gave us a little bit of the results. I would think that if I were really going to trust them, I'd want to see the whole results, more than just that one little blurb that said 59% more succeeded with the vegan diet versus the ADA diet. Okay, and then I just didn't think it was terribly logically effective. So my thought on this was that there were some questions about the credibility because there was an unnamed author and their affiliation with Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Way too much pathos for a scientific essay, and the logos is not bad, but man, it is lacking. And so I would say their biggest downfall is credibility. So that's kind of how I would start. And so now I've got myself an outline, and this is just for the first article. I know that, but I've got myself an outline to kind of start saying that's how I'm going to do this. And then later we'll build a paper. I've got an outline for a whole paper, I promise you. So kind of keep that in your mind. But I wanted you to have this today because I think this is like the best thing that you can use to kind of get started. So if y'all have any questions, please let me know. I'm always around. I do nothing except try to kill fire ants. So I have fire ants trying to get one of my trees. Anyway, you guys have a great day. See you later. Bye.